Hello, everybody. What's up? What's up? Comic Book Radio in the daytime. It is 1 o'clock Eastern over here. I'm your host, Peter Cimetti. This is episode 176. And today, my guest is Graham Nolan. Graham Nolan's coming back. The return of Graham Nolan to Comic Book Radio Island. Did you guys check out Return to Monster Island? It's on Indiegogo right now. If you haven't, it's in the description of the show. You can go subscribe to Graham's YouTube. You can go check out the campaign. And also, unfortunately, there was some bad news, but I think things are working out for the better with Graham's daughter and her husband and their dog. There was an apartment fire. They've got a GoFundMe. The link for that also is in the description of the show if you guys want to go help out. Many of you have, which is amazing. And a lot of people obviously love Graham and care about him and his family. And a lot of you guys came out and supported, which was fantastic. So before we bring Graham on, before I bring him on to continue a discussion that we had on his channel a few weeks ago, let me say hello to you guys in the chat. We've got Dr. Mask here. What's up, Dr. Mask? Thank you for being here tonight. And giving a shout out as well to Graham's project right there. His latest graphic novel, Return to Monster Island. We got Wayne. What's up, Wayne? Hope you're doing well. We also have Golden Tree TV. How's it going, Golden Tree? Dan Genovese is here. What's up, Dan? Hope you're doing good. Graham Nolan in the chat as well. The ubiquitous Graham Nolan. Cole King. What's up, Cole? Good to see you during the daytime, especially. And also, Past Master Dan is here. How's it going, Past Master? And Citizen Ronan. How's it going, Citizen Ronan? So we're simulcasting right now. We're doing this from now on both YouTube and Twitter. So if you're watching on Twitter, hello. Feel free to comment. Don't be a stranger. But we're going to be bringing more shows to you guys. Not just interviews, but topic discussions and all that kind of good stuff. All right. So without further ado, let's bring him on. The man of the hour, Mr. Universe, Graham Nolan.
Hello, Pete.
How's it going, Graham?
It's going good, going good. How are you?
Doing very good. Happy belated birthday as well. Good grief, man. 62?
Yeah. Another day above the sod. That's a good
Spectacular.
one. That's how I look at it.
When 62 years old, I hope to look as good as you. I do.
Oh, thank you, Yoda.
I butchered that Yoda quote, but yeah.
It's because you didn't try the accent, you know. You didn't do the thing, you know.
Exactly. Then I would have gotten to the flow of it.
Yeah. It's about assuming the character and its motivations, you know. Exactly.
Man, so we had a great conversation when I was on your channel about all kinds of things, cryptids, aliens, and whatnot. I want to kind of continue that conversation a bit, but first and foremost, I do want to get into the mindset of understanding the book that you're creating here, Return to Monster Island. Now, this is a sequel based on something that you created back when?
1998.
Wow, okay. And this is the first sequel to it?
Yes.
Is this connecting up with the rest of like your Nolan verse comics and graphic novels? Yeah.
As a matter of fact, it is in the Ghosts of Matacumba Key. I will just say there is a interesting epilogue, which will get everybody set up for Escape from Monster Island.
So it's going to be
the third book.
Third.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool.
I'm planning on doing that one later in the year. You know, probably towards the end of the year. Start
nice
campaign for that. You know.
Awesome, man. First and foremost, everything okay with you and yours?
Yeah. I appreciate you mentioning, Becky and Preston's apartment fire, and Leo, their dog, all got out safe and sound. The only casualty in that fire was a six unit apartment, and somebody lost their dog. They weren't home, so but Preston was home, and he grabbed their laptop and grabbed their dog, and that was all they got when they got out of there.
Wow.
But they're fine. They're healthy. Now they got an Airbnb for a month so that they have a place to land and it's fully furnished, so they can start looking now for a regular apartment, and then start to furnish that and get their stuff and continue life. It's a punch in the mouth, but as Rocky said in your little intro, that's the thing that beats you. You got to get up.
Yeah.
And thanks to the generosity of so many people, they're going to have a much better start of it in a difficult time. Getting stuff
Oh yeah.
refurnished, and
Especially nowadays, even if you've got insurance on things, it's like pulling teeth more
Oh
than
yeah.
ever before.
And, well, how do we know what kind of TV or how big that TV was? You have the receipts? No, the receipts burned up. You know, I mean, so
Yeah.
they're going to nickel and dime the shit out of them with their insurance and stuff. So that's the reason and it might take a year for them to actually get paid for it.
Oh
So
yeah.
that's why I started the GoFundMe to get them cash quickly so that they could, get on with life. And then whatever comes in on the insurance, fine. Hey, thanks, Past Master Dan.
Yeah. Thank you for putting that link out there. If you haven't had a chance to go check that out too, and maybe spare a few bucks if you would like to, please feel free. But yeah, I'm glad to hear that they're okay. It's kind of relatively in my neck of the woods. It's
Yes.
like maybe an hour and a half away from me.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind
It's
of
very rural,
crazy.
where they're at.
Yeah.
Campton. Is it Campton? Campton, I think. Yeah. Um, so like the fire guys, there's no fire hydrants, so they had to run a hose like almost a mile back into a pond to
Yeah,
get
that's what I
to get
read.
water. I mean, that's
Crazy.
insane. I mean, that's a total loss. By the time you get that set up, even if the fire department's right down the street, just to get that set up and drag that all the way out and get it
Yeah.
on a wood structure, forget it. It's toast.
Oh my lord. Well, I'm glad they're okay, and hopefully
Right.
on to bigger and better things.
Yep.
Man, oh
Yep.
man. But so getting back to returning to Monster Island in more ways
Hmm.
than one. As far as the monsters and everything like that goes, what kind of creatures are you coming up with? Are these creatures based on pre-existing creatures of myth or legend or anything else, or are you coming up with purely original type of things?
Purely original. None of them have any backgrounds as of yet. They're just there because the island is a repository and these aliens run it, and they expect to be paid for it, to be taking these monsters off your hands. And so it's basically, a service they provide. And so the monsters that I I use are the ones that I need for the story. If I need a giant monster that breathes fire, boom, I put a giant monster that breathes fire in there. If I need a muck monster, to rise up out of the swamp, okay, bam, we got one there. So I just create them the way I need them. And one of the ones that I created that was fun was these creatures called hypnosaurs, and they're like these little dinosaur creatures, probably as large as maybe a large dog, and they run around on all fours, and then they pop up at you like that with their little fingers like this, and their eyes start to swirl, and they send out all these and they hypnotize their prey, and then they eat you. So they were really fun to work with. So they're not all giant monsters. Some of them are smaller.
I like that. I like the idea of creating your own, because
Hmm.
even within the series I'm doing with King Cryptid, people are like, "Oh, are you gonna have this cryptid, that cryptid, the other cryptid?" I could kind of mine from the existing database of cryptids, but that's just not as much fun. Even if I mention them, even if I kind of amalgamize them, whatever it may be, it's more fun to do that than just like, "Oh, well, here's Bigfoot, here's the Jersey Devil, here's the Loch Ness monster." Just
Right.
run the gamut of it. It's just that's not as fun. I like that idea of you just kind of creating what you need and coming up with your own monsters and creatures.
And the way they look is as I try to think, well, how would Kirby draw this thing?
Oh yeah.
Because this was a love letter to, the Jack Kirby monster comics, Tales of Suspense type things, the pre-Fantastic Four monster comics that they did. So that's what I'm always thinking is like, well, how would Kirby do it?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, were you a fan of, or maybe are still a fan of like Godzilla and those kinds of kaiju type monsters?
Oh, yeah, Godzilla was my favorite as a kid. I mean, the first Monster Times I got, um, you probably don't remember the Monster Times. It was a more regional magazine, Monster magazine. It was published out of New York, and it was a newspaper that came out every week for a period.
Hmm.
And their logo looked like the New York Times, only it had like this scary monster part. And it was printed on newsprint, and it covered, any monster movies that were coming out. And the first one I got was a tribute to Godzilla. And
Oh,
yeah, I've been just a big Godzilla fan ever since I was a kid.
nice. Did you have a chance to see the new film? I haven't seen it yet. The Godzilla
Minus one?
minus one. Yeah.
Yes, it's excellent. It's better than any of the American ones that have come out over the last few years. The Monarch ones.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
the first one was sort of okay. It was a little boring. Took 45 minutes for Godzilla to show up. The second one I liked, King of the Monsters, because all of a sudden you see Rodan and Mothra and Ghidorah. Then the one versus King Kong was horse shit. And then the new one that's coming out looks like a bigger pile of horse shit. So I probably won't even
Oh,
see that one.
yeah. The American ones turned me off completely from it, and that's why I didn't bother the minus one. I didn't realize that it wasn't an
This is
American one.
Toho. These are the
So
guys. This is
yeah.
the music. You've got that Mafubi music. That da 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 da. All these musical keys from old Godzilla movies are so
Oh,
great.
that sounds great. I gotta get around to seeing it. I don't know if it's streaming or anything yet, but I gotta get around to seeing it.
Yeah, you should. If you like those things, you'll love this because he's a monster again. He's not some force of nature or, old god of the earth or kind of that kind of shit. He's just a monster, and it's so cool. And the story is really a story of people in post-war Japan. And one of the coolest effects to me is what Japan looked like, how they make it look. You really believe that it was the shit was bombed out of it. It's so good. It's so immersive that way in putting you into that period.
That's
And
great.
it deals with guilt and anger and fear, and it's really a story about people that has a monster that motivates things or pushes things and pushes people to do things. Very, very good. I can't say enough
Wow.
about it.
So it's like a big disaster film with heart to it, not just
Yeah,
that the people are like fodder for the
yeah,
disaster or the monster in this
yeah.
instance.
My favorite Godzilla movies are the ones where I care about the human story. Destroy All Monsters, Godzilla versus Ebera, where they go on the island to look for the brother, and there's a thief with them, and they stole all this shit. Yeah, I love that backstory. But the ones that are where the people story gets in the way, then I don't like that either.
Yeah, I hear you. There's a balance to it, and that's the thing. I liked how you mentioned the musicality because I find that there's so many things where they have these amazing film scores and then you make sequels or whatever it is, and I don't know if it's a rights issue or if it's just a creative decision or whatever, but they abandon those film scores
Mm.
and it doesn't feel the same, or sometimes even worse, they abandon the film score and they use like whatever, pop music or whatever soundtrack in terms of pre-existing songs, which I get taken out of that stuff immediately as soon as that comes in. I need a film score, especially if something's epic of scale and things like that.
So, give me an example of something that you're thinking of.
That did it bad.
Yeah.
um the biggest one that comes to my mind because it made me stop dead in my tracks was Thor Ragnarok. I absolutely hated Thor Ragnarok, and not
Well,
just
I did
because the
too, but it wasn't because of the
it
music.
wasn't just the music. I liked it. Then that's the thing is I love Led Zeppelin. I love the music that's in it, but I don't like that it's used in it. I like
Uh,
film scores, but that movie had way more problems than the
oh,
than the film
yeah.
score.
I didn't even remember that being in it, to be honest,
That
because I
was
was
it for
so
me.
pissed off
MCU,
with
I
the
was it.
story.
That was it. I was done right after
Yeah,
that.
I was so pissed off at the story that I couldn't even hear the music. I was
Oh,
too busy yelling at the screen.
the ringing in your ears from the blood, you just hear your heart pounding through your
Yeah, yeah.
ears.
That wouldn't happen. That's so stupid. What did you do to Hulk?
It was like it was like the opposite to me of what would need to be done to make a good movie, where every couple of minutes there's something that's interesting that advances the plot further. Every couple of minutes, instead, I was like, what is this? What is this crap? What is
Yeah.
going on?
Well, look
And I
at the
mean, maybe
director.
people enjoy it. I'm sure some people out there do, but not for me. It's not for me.
The director all he wanted to do was go from one setup to punchline to another setup and punchline. That's all it was. Um, he didn't care about those characters. He emasculated both of them to the point where it was the beginning of the end of the Marvel universe, and then they give him another movie to do. So, more power to you. Burn it to the ground.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so much so that I've seen Chris Hemsworth even come out and talk about, like, I'd do the character again, but not if it's going to be like that.
Yeah,
Not if they're going to continue doing what they've been doing.
yeah. Big Lebowski Thor. Yeah, that was great. That was a great idea.
It's just, yeah, it's just too silly. I thought Thor Ragnarok might have been a good script for like a Lego Thor movie, that kind of a thing. It just felt too removed. I like the epic scale of I like the idea of every single thing had a feel to it, and then they stopped having a feel, and the
Hmm.
feel of it became like this jokey, too self-aware,
Yes.
and just everything was just, oh well, this is the superheroes and just silliness, and
Yeah.
okay, well, all right, you guys do that. That's not for me. And
Yeah. I want more Captain America Winter Soldier movies.
yeah, yeah,
That style, that feel, that sense of importance. You know.
absolutely, yeah, you need that gravitas.
Yeah, and
um
he can have some humor. That's okay as
Totally.
long as the humor comes from the situation and comes out of the character. Like in Avengers when Captain America, when there's a mention of flying monkeys, and he goes, "I get that reference." Nobody else could say that without it being stupid, but Captain America got it because it was a part of the culture he grew up in, and finally somebody says something he knew about.
Yeah,
That was great. I love that.
exactly. Yeah, even in the first Thor, when he's like throwing the drink down, and it's like part of his culture, and it's like it's a fish out of water story,
Yeah.
so, but exactly. um in terms of that though, bringing gravitas to stories, how are you bringing gravitas to your stories? Because you've got a great mix going on with like adventure and action and horror and sci-fi, all of that stuff.
Yeah, it depends on what property I'm working on as to how deep I want to go. Um, the Chenoo, was a straight up rated R horror tale, where Alien Alamo had a lot more emotional heart to it, even though I drew it in a cartoony way. Um, and Monster Island is pure fun. That's like an all ages, kids, adult uh, type of story. There's not going to be any gore. There's not going to be any bad words or anything else. Um, so that's how I handled that one. Ghost of Matakumbiki, again, that one is much more, I would say, like an Elmore Leonard book with ghosts. So we have, you know, uh, bad people doing bad things. We have drugs involved in this. We have murders, violence, all that kind of stuff. And yet we have characters that have some humor, which is why I love Elmore Leonard's writing and Carl Hyacin. They create really interesting bad guys that you love to hate, but they can be funny too.
Yeah, I kind of compare it also to like what the Coen brothers do with a lot of their stuff, where you've
Yeah,
got like
yeah,
these, serious kind of things going on, but there's these moments of absurdity that ring
right.
kind of very true to the way life can work out a lot of the time.
Yeah, Tarantino does that too. You know, um, you've got these two hitmen, and they're sitting in the car talking about cheeseburgers.
Yeah.
Um, fascinating stuff. You get to know the guys, and they become funny and stuff. And but these are some sick psychopaths, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Mutt's got a good question. At least I'm interested. Graham, about how many original pages are in those flat drawers behind you?
My God, I have no idea. Hundreds and hundreds for sure. They're overflowing actually, and then I have FedEx boxes with even more in the basement area on the other side. Um,
Wow.
yeah, you know,
So do
40 years. That's why I do digital now. I don't need any more art.
oh, I was just about to ask. Yeah, do you still do traditional?
I do. In fact, Escape from Monster Island is going to be on done originally or traditionally, is because all the other ones were done that way, and so I want the artwork for all those books to be, uh, there's a
Yeah,
feel to it. I can add things, digitally after it's done. Move things around, change some things, or add some.
totally.
Yeah, I can do that too, but still the original art would still stand, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, there's something about original art, man. The traditional style, the pen, the ink on the paper.
Yeah. I liked when the
Just nothing
word
like it.
balloons were hand lettered on the pages too, because
Oh yeah,
then, if you bought a piece of original art, a page, you have the word balloons as well. So you have a little mini story going on that in that framed piece of art.
yeah. That seems like it's a completely lost art at this point.
Yeah, there's still some guys that are doing it. In fact, if we hit our 100,000 stretch goal on Return to Monster Island, I'm adding an 8-page story, which I just finished writing today, called Kirby's Cigar. And I plan to do that like a Mad Magazine, or not Mad Magazine, Mad Comics. Before it became Mad Magazine, it was a comic book form. And Wally Wood and Kurtzman and Jack Davis did all these really crazy, over the top humor things. And so I'm looking to illustrate it in that kind of Wally Wood look, but I want to get it hand lettered too. You know,
Nice.
I want a letter that'll hand letter the artwork, because I'm doing that traditionally as well.
Oh, very cool, man. I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna have to take a hard right turn here. We're gonna
Okay.
deep dive. It's
Let's
been
do
about
it.
25 minutes. We have people settled down. Now we can horrify them and shock them. So we had a
Are we
great
talking politics?
conversation.
What are we doing?
No, we had a great conversation. Something far more nefarious, but still connected.
Mm.
But we won't get into the political side of it, not for the most part, anyway. We had a great conversation on your channel about monsters, cryptids, aliens, all these other things, and I want to continue that a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But focusing on you particularly with this, where did your interest with that stem from?
Well, in the 70s, it was the tail end of the monster craze that started in the late 1950s. So I was still part of that, where UFOs, the cryptids like, Loch Ness Monster, and, all that stuff was still being, talked about. There was the In Search of show in the late 70s that covered a lot of that stuff, the pyramids and the, chariots of the gods type stuff. And then the monster magazines, like I mentioned, the Monster Times. Um, uh, I I was always drawn to that since I was 8 years old. I was a monster kid before I was a comic book kid. I watched Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, and that was it for me. It's like I saw that movie, and it was like, it's not a great movie, but now, when I look at it, but
Yeah.
it did its job. It suckered me in
Oh,
and
it's
scared me too.
you're seeing things you'd never see before. You know,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
incredible.
and the makeup looked real to me, to an 8-year-old kid, on a black and white TV. When Larry Talbot turns into, the Wolfman, and he gets those beady eyes and shifting back and forth, I was like, that he scared me. That's why I became a Frankenstein fan, because I always felt like, Frankenstein was the good guy in that, and the Wolfman was a bad guy, and that's why Frankenstein became my all-time favorite monster.
Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah, I was just about to ask you, do you have a favorite among those? So Frankenstein, huh?
Hmm.
Frankenstein's monster.
Boris Karloff, Frankenstein.
Oh, Karloff. It's.
Yeah.
I still don't think that they've had anything that's topped Karloff's interpretation.
No, no. That 1931 version for the first Frankenstein movie, you're never gonna. Karloff was, sort of a barely employed actor. He was thin. He took his bridge out, so his face caved in a little bit more. He was, he had the look of a cadaver. Fast forward 4 years later, when they make Bride of Frankenstein, he's now a well-respected, well-paid, and well-fed actor. He's his face is thicker and heavier and stuff, and then they burn off his hair from the windmill fire and all that kind of stuff. He's got the scarring, and that was cool too. But it's not as cool as when he backs into that room the first time you see the monster, and his hair is all oily looking and stuff, and he's got the heavy lids and the sunken cheeks, and he you know, looks up at the sun
Oh
like he's
yeah.
looking to God. Oh my God, I love that.
Amazing lighting with those movies too. Just
Yeah.
such a great use of it. Very comic book esque to create these dramatic shots and these
Hmm.
compositions on the screen.
Yeah, and
Um,
the German expressionism that they use too
yeah,
for the designs of things were really cool.
yeah, absolutely, man. My favorite would have to be the Wolfman, but it's just I don't know. It's something about werewolves, man.
A lot of
I
people,
dig
I think that's
werewolves.
Chuck's favorite. I think that's Chuck Dixon's favorite too. Is the Wolfman? Um, I guess the Wolfman scared me because he was in that first one that I'd seen. But little things used to bother me, like he turned into the Wolfman, and then the moon would rise or the sun would rise, and he'd turn back into Larry Talbot, and all of a sudden he's got his shoes on and a different color shirt. You know, was he stick his shoes in his pocket or something just for when
He's
he?
got like a spare
Yeah, yeah.
tucked away in various
It's
places.
like the Hulk. All of a sudden he's got an extra pair of pants. When he becomes Bruce Banner.
Exactly. So, getting into things a little bit further. Now, you mentioned In Search of, and I love that show. You're talking about the one where Leonard Nimoy was
Yeah,
the narrator, right? Yeah, it's a
yeah.
great show. I still look at a bunch of those episodes because it's funny to see how some of the things that are theorized have now been brought to light as, yeah, that's actual science at this point. And
Right.
but back then it's like, oh well, they're thinking this, and and a lot of people at the time that were bringing those theories to light, they were getting ruined left and right. They're whack jobs. They're pseudoscientists. They're flat out crazy. You shouldn't even
Right.
trust anything they're saying. And then over
Attention
time,
seekers.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, did you see anything in particular among that show that really stood out to you? Anything you remember still to this day, an episode that stands out?
Not really. I remember the opening more than anything. They would show all, they had that familiar theme, and then they would show all different things like pyramids and UFOs, the famous Bigfoot walk. All those images that were popular in the day. Um, but you talked about Bigfoot and theorizing and all that, and there's that famous film. And then I think we discussed it a little bit on my show about they've done high definition scans of that, and they've stabilized the image so that you can see the thing walking very clearly. And as doubtful as I was, and like there's even stories where the guy said, "Oh yeah, I faked it." Um, when you see it digitized like that and cleaned up, it's like there's no way you faked that in 1970 whatever. Who got to you and told you to say that? Because the thing's got breasts. Who would think of to add breasts to this thing? Apes don't have them, you
Yeah.
know, like, and yet this thing is walking and they're moving, and you can see muscles flexing under the fur, and not wrinkles, from an oversized, fursuit. Um, that to me really got me thinking. And
Yeah, it's
I'm a doubter. I'm a doubting Thomas. As I said on my show, that when it comes to this stuff, I need harder proof, and I need things explained to me before I can, you know, accept it. But that went a long way to push me over to the other side on that particular one.
I'm a healthily skeptical true believer. So
I
I
want to
believe
believe.
it all. I
Yeah.
believe it all. It's all there. It's all possible. All things are possible. All things exist. And then at the same time, I'm like questioning all of its existence.
Mm-hmm. Right. Question the source material too. Who is this?
Exactly.
What's he getting out of this?
Yeah. And that's the thing that you bring up a really good point. We talked about it a little bit before on your channel too, but if it is a forgery, if it's a fake, if it's a costume, it is one of the best, especially of that time period.
Yeah.
I can't wrap my head around it. You don't see anything close to it in Hollywood, in anything for the longest period of time. I think the closest you end up getting eventually is like Harry and the Hendersons.
That's what I was going to say. Harry and the Hendersons. Did Rick Baker work on that, or was
Yeah,
that?
yeah,
Okay, yeah.
yeah.
And it was either him or the guy who did Aliens, and Predator. I can never remember his name. But yeah. There's no way you can fake that kind of thing. The detail and.
Yeah, and it's interesting because one of them, I forget of the two, which one had passed away a couple of years after. He was saying it was fake, and then the other one who's still around is saying it isn't. And there's tons of reasons to say it's fake because people are going to think you're crazy, you're attention seeking. It's quite the coincidence. You went out to make a Bigfoot documentary, you stumbled upon a Bigfoot. There's all kinds of different things that are there in terms of that. And also, the thing that I find sad but interesting is the fact that a lot of these kinds of cryptid sightings, especially among Sasquatch sightings, there's alleged radioactivity being read in those regions.
Yeah.
There's a lot of situations of fast, aggressive cancers that people get after having a close encounter with one of these things. For what the reason of that is, we can theorize that all day, but it's interesting to me that one of the individuals did die pretty much of an aggressive cancer just within a couple of years of having that encounter. I don't know in approximation of who was closer, what was it like in terms of what was going on, but even that's been theorized to why these things appear blurry on film. Because of the radioactivity, the different frequency maybe that they either exist on or warp or whatever kind of electromagnetic field is going on. There's all kinds of different things, but it's interesting that, and sad, that there are so many cases of that among people who have those kinds of encounters. Same thing with a lot of alien abductions too, people with these fast-acting, aggressive cancers and diseases, but almost always cancer.
Hold on. Sorry. Hit the wrong button. Sorry about that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I find so interesting about it is because of that there's a lot of cases of what is being described even as like radiation sickness among people that have these kinds of encounters. And I know some people, so why are there no evidence of the bones? Now that's the thing too, is that a lot of this kind of stuff gets covered up. A lot of this kind of stuff, if it exists, there's a lot of different reasons to cover it up. So maybe we're not being shown official evidence or documentation or something that's been discovered. Maybe not yet, maybe not ever. But there's certainly a lot of people out there that have, and there's a lot of people out there for decades that have tried to produce evidence. There's people out there that have tried to get DNA testing on fibers and things like that and tissue that they find out, and it's inconclusive as far as what it is. So
okay, certain things I can understand the cover up. For example, UFOs. If the government knew that super intelligent life has been here, and and they know this, I can see why they would cover that up. It would destroy a lot of people's world view of the universe or something like that, and people get frightened and I get that. What would be a reason for covering up the existence of a Sasquatch?
I think there's a lot of reasons, because these things would basically be the closest link to human beings possible. If it is an evolutionary thing, it also turns into now redefining and changing everything we know about the evolution of species. And then there's also, to get like more sadly morose about it, I'm sure corporations and governments and all kinds of people don't like the fact that there's like wood people living out in the forests in certain regions, and now we're going to have to protect those regions. Now we're going to have to classify things. Now we're going to have to shed light on all these different sorts of beings that exist out there, because there's a lot of forest department people who do a lot of this reporting of these kinds of encounters and sightings and things that don't add up, that don't just seem like it's a mountain lion or it's a bear or whatever it may be. So it's strange to me, but then all I can think is, what if it has nothing to do with the evolution of human beings? What if it has something to do with something that is far more mysterious and that has closer ties to things like extraterrestrials or another dimension, or you can go run the gamut, or it has to do with something that there was a species that was there a long time ago that has managed to kind of come and go as they please for the most part, as long as we almost like there's some kind of pact between human beings and these creatures, because they exist all over the world. It's not just like Pacific Northwest and then that's it. There's all over the world forever. There's been talks of like a wild man and a big giant and all these other things, and among other things as well. So it makes me think, well, if there are ties to it not necessarily being of terrestrial origin on Earth, or there's ties to it of being something else, then you would absolutely want to try to cover that existence up. Especially if they're highly intelligent, and for the most part, they seem to want to stay away from human beings. They want to kind of be left to where they are.
Smart move.
Yeah, right. Very smart move, especially if they're noticing what's going on with the rest of the, following the patterns, and they're like, all right, we're just going to try to do our own thing here.
This place is messed up. Let's stay away.
Yeah, but it almost could be like, there could be a theory that I'm putting out here. I don't know if someone else has ever thought of it, but where maybe at some point in time, human beings were genetically altered in a certain way to be the way we are now, and these creatures, these beings, these humanoid beings were not, and that they are able to maybe utilize nature more effectively than we ever would be able to. And so their kind of evolution went down one path, and then our evolution went down another, and we kind of have stagnated in many parts physically, but we've been evolving intellectually. I mean, some people can argue against that.
You prove that?
But in terms of what the Sasquatch, the humanoid Sasquatch type character there, in terms of their evolution, maybe they do know how to access things that we only think are metaphysical or impossible or magic, more or less. But they are tapped into the resonance, the frequency of the world, nature, whatever it may be. And maybe they can kind of come and go as they please and do certain things, make certain sounds that make them seem invisible, camouflage, whatever it may be. There's so many different theories out there with all of this. It's mind-boggling. I think we're seeing only very recently maybe people deciding to get famous off of being like a Bigfoot hunter. But for the longest time, if you had said something that you legitimately thought you met an alien or a Bigfoot or this, that was life ruining.
Convention, Did you ever see the Abominable Snowman of the Himalayas? I think it's 1957 Peter Cushing Hammer film with Forrest Tucker.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's a really great one about the abominable snowman, and they have like this psychic thing where they can get into the minds of people and start screwing with them. And then when he finally meets him at the end, alert, folks, um, he can see the intelligence in their eyes when they come to claim one of their own that had been killed. And yeah, they don't show you the thing; they just show you the creature's shadows on the cave wall, and uh, but then they do a close up on the eyes, and you can see the intelligence of the eyes, but the face is all completely different, than humans.
Yeah,
For a movie as old as that, for them to postulate some of those ideas, I think was really cool.
absolutely. Yeah, just even the concept of it not being a mindless brute
Hmm.
or just like a bigger ape kind of a thing.
Yeah, the
You
mindless
know,
brutes were the humans. It was the treasure hunters, the Forrest Tucker and his crew. They
yeah,
were the assholes. They were the real monsters.
exactly.
Yeah.
And Kellraiser brings up a good point here too, that if it would also open up the door for other cryptids and legends being real. I think there's been a very obvious cap on wanting to not acknowledge or even try to look down the path of anything that seems to be fantastical potentially being not
Hmm.
only very possible but very mundanely normal, and that this is just something that happens all the time and has always been happening, and it's been here, it's probably older than us, and that's kind of it. There's a tremendous amount of different experiences that people have had, but there's also been a lot of evidence and documentation and things that just go missing all of a sudden, and governments that come in and cover it up, or they have agencies that aren't government related and are maybe
Hmm.
tied to something else. That's where the whole, like, when you talked about if we're going to talk politics, I mean, I think there's a case to be made that if people think that these things aren't connected, that global politics aren't tied into these kinds of affairs, I think they'd be sorely missing a huge piece of the puzzle.
Oh yeah, I couldn't agree more. Um, Politics and money is what you have to follow to get to the root of a lot of this stuff. Um, it's corrupt, and the money trail is always there. Just recently, there's the testifying of that Boeing guy. He's been waiting all these years to testify,
Well, yeah.
and all of a sudden now he decides now to commit suicide. The joke is that he shot himself in the back of the head 5 times. uh, but how can you not say, yeah, oh, you're just a conspiracy theorist? I mean, the guy, was, distraught and all that kind of stuff. Well, he was about to give testimony, and all of a sudden he ends up like that. So um, we live in a world where you can't believe your news sources anymore, which you used to be able to, and that's one of the greatest losses today, is that lack of trust. Because without that lack of trust, without that solid resource of information, um, that gives way to a lot of nonsense.
Yep.
And then you run into the problems of people finding out things, or think they found out things, and they go off on their own tangents, and then it just becomes a free for all for information, and the truth, which is what is we all need to seek, is the truth. News needs to be about the truth. Here's what happened, when, where, what, and you make up your own decision about what that means. And without
Absolutely.
that, and to tie that into what we're talking about, if you can't trust the news sources, then everything is a conspiracy. And then so these things give rise, and we start to think, well, is this real, or are they lying to us? We've seen them lie to us before. Now we know that they're capable of lying to us. So what don't we know, or what it's just
Yeah.
a rabbit hole that you get down.
It really is, and that's the thing that, as a storyteller, it's fun to play with, and you
Oh
can
yeah.
kind of explore that rabbit hole. But then, if you come back to reality and you're like, man, it sometimes I wonder, they're making our jobs a lot harder because we got to get more fantastical.
Yeah. Exactly.
You can't just put a monster in there anymore. You can't just have an alien. You got to get even crazier with it. You got to get even more thought out with it because truth is definitely becoming far stranger than fiction in many ways. But yeah,
Yeah.
there's a great deal of all that kind of stuff. Anytime someone's just even dismissive, I think, of the fact, and I see it a lot. I think you see it a lot too. Just dismissive of the fact that there has been a mountain of lies and cover-ups over the years.
Hmm.
When they're just like, no, that didn't really have, and then, well, they had their reasons and they did this and well, what makes you think that they don't always have their reasons, that they don't always have, well, we have to not say the truth because of this and that and the other thing.
Well, look at just take COVID for example. How the world handled that, how the lies that were put out about that it's been proven wrong, and yet now we're paying for that because we have a generation of children that are behind educationally, that have lost the ability to engage with people because of the masks and all that nonsense, which didn't work. We have a vaccine that has been impacting young people, young men particularly, which they deny. To me, it ended up being and maybe it didn't start out this way, but it certainly became one. Was a great social experiment. You know, that governments around the world want push the envelope on. Well, what can we make them do? At what point do they push back? Well, they didn't push back when we said stay in your homes. They didn't push back when we said, well, you can't engage in business. You know, but eventually,
Yeah, it's interesting. Once the trucker protest hit,
mm,
within a month, things started like rolling back quietly.
hmm
Once they wouldn't give up, especially the truckers in Canada, I noticed.
yes,
All of a sudden, things started quietly rolling back, and now it's like the Napoleon quote about that you don't have to necessarily lie or cover up the truth. You just have to prolong the release of it.
mm,
Till it doesn't really matter. Talk about it a couple of years, 5, 10, 20 years, and then release it. And then what does it matter? What does it matter?
yeah.
Oh yeah, well that's and you can always
Or
kind of
or
play
or
around it and say, oh,
they
we
fall
just
on the
discovered.
idea. They fall on the idea that, well, our intentions were good. We did everything we did was for good intentions to keep people safe. But that's not your job.
No.
In a free society, it's my job to keep my family safe. It is my job to keep my neighbors safe. It is not your job. Your job is to make sure people don't come across our borders, whether it's down in Mexico
Well,
or
that's the double talk,
planes.
and I don't want to go full tilt because, man, we could. I don't want to
Yeah,
go full tilt into a political discussion, although,
right.
to me, it's not about politics. These are about just kind of common sense issues that keep occurring over and over again, and you see the
Hmm.
double talk. I had seen, and I don't even like bringing up the president.
Hmm.
Seen the president put out a tweet about it, and he didn't tweet it. We all know he's not tweeting it.
Right.
Someone that is assuming the role of the president's Twitter account tweeted out about caring about your health and lowering the prescription costs. But meanwhile, like a month ago, the same dude's up making a video about being pissed off that he's not getting as much chips and junk food and crap that he used to get. And he's going to make sure that these companies pony up on making sure they give you as much junk food as possible when you pay for it. And I'm like, you care about health, and meanwhile
Take-
your concern is, hey, these guys that give you crap for food that's loaded with awful ingredients,
yeah.
genetically modified, all this crap. He shows a picture of like Oreos and Doritos
Yeah.
and ice
Doritos. Yeah.
cream, and you've got to make
Shrink
sure
circuit.
you get your healthy full of those junk food,
Right.
but care
Yeah.
about your health. Of course, you want to make sure the prescriptions get lower because you
Right.
want to make
Right.
sure everyone's going to need those and they're
That's
going to be
right.
able to
Yeah.
get access to them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
as it skyrockets, and your health deteriorates, Yeah, of course you get the economy of scale. These things become more prevalent and the price will go down without them having to lift a finger. But if you say that's what you're caring about, and people go, oh, yeah, look like they care. But
They
meanwhile,
care.
well, if they care, why aren't they actually regulating the ingredients and what's going on with your food
Right.
quality and everything else involved and
There's
promoting
ingredients that
healthy
we
living?
are allowed to use in our country that are banned in Europe.
Tons of them.
Yeah.
Tons
Yeah.
of them.
So
Even in
we can't
a
even
lot of
export some of these things,
a lot of exports that come even from the Middle East, like Turkey and various
Mhm.
regions like that you would assume, that it must be horrible. And all of a sudden, there's no artificial preservatives, colors, there's no GMO, all these other things, and they're coming out of these countries where we would view them as lesser, and that we must be more civilized.
Mhm.
I see anything that ever says genetically engineered, and those words horrify me on food.
Yeah, me too. You know, we were in Germany a few years back, and we went to the Oktoberfest in Stuttgart, and that's the second biggest Oktoberfest in Germany. The first being Munich, and basically the Oktoberfest is like a state fair. You know how you go to your state fair. There's rides, there's food vendors and stuff like that, and then there's these giant tents that hold like 10,000 people in each tent with a false front, so it looks like a building, and those are the beer tents. And each one's got 10,000 people in there, and they're eating pig's knuckles, schnitzel, sausages, and they're washing it down with the German beer. And not one person was overweight walking around there. Now you go to a county fair or a state fair in the United States where you see deep fried Oreos or deep fried butter sticks, and you see people on those little get around scooters because their ankles are so swelled that they can't walk, and they're eating all that crappy food and stuff. And yet here's these people eating what we're told are bad for you, sausages and fried schnitzel and all that kind of stuff, and yet they don't have the same levels of heart disease or obesity that we have because their food is all natural. There is no shit into it. German beer only has 4 ingredients. You can only have 4 ingredients. It's called the Reinheitsgebot, the German purity law of 1513. There's nothing in there that is impure. That's why you got, yeah, I mean, I drank 2 liters of those things and didn't even have a headache.
Wow, yeah, because it's the impurities that end up giving you so much dehydration and that huge,
Sure.
awful, horrible hangover.
The sulfites
And
that we have in
yeah,
wine here,
yeah, you can get a horrible hangover from not even drinking alcohol, from drinking all kinds of or ingesting all kinds of other
Sure.
foods that dehydrate
Soda.
you.
It's terrible.
Yeah, absolutely. And Eliza Barr says, "Oh no, demonetization coming! I just got it back. I just got it back." But yeah, thank you while it's back. True believer for that $2 super chat. Says, "Be careful
What
with
did you
that
get
free thinking,
demonetized
boys."
for?
I got demonetized because I still don't know, man. They didn't give me a concise, specific reason. They gave me a very vague email one day back in November, and they had said that they found that the majority of my videos don't comply with their YouTube partner program policy. And I was like, can you point out a couple videos or something that occurred or whatever? Because they all get demonetized because of the song usage and things like that. So I'm like, I've seen people use songs all the time with things and they don't get demonetized on their channels. They still have memberships and super chats and whatever. I'm not
Yeah.
expecting the videos to be monetized. But they had demonetized the whole channel. And they had said, if you do this and that and the other thing, you were going to completely shut down your channel. And I was like, all right. Well, I had no specific explanation for it. So they said you could reapply February 26th. So I did. And I did nothing differently on my channel than I was doing previously, and then reapplied, and they approved it within a few hours. And just like they did last year, they also, in November 22, they demonetized and then remonetized me in February 23. And they did that again this year. I don't know if it's like a ritual that they do and they decide to demonetize during the holiday season or something like that. But for me, that's how it
weird.
happened.
That's
And
weird.
I still don't know. I still don't know what I did. And we'll see. We'll see.
That's
Maybe
the
I'll
worst
get one of
part, is
those
they won't
little.
tell you.
Yeah, they won't tell me.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's like some kind of AI bot I'm typing back to, and that they're informing me, and it's never a human being anymore. Technology.
I
But
had a
yeah.
show that got taken down last week. Um, it said NBC had put in a claim from NCIS or something like that. Like I had shown a clip, and I'm like, I didn't show any clip from NCIS. The closest thing to getting around to NCIS was that we pulled up Christopher Maloney's IMDb page, and I was talking about what that he wrote this himself because he was blessed with rugged good looks and steely blue eyes, and that you could tell he wrote it himself type of thing. So I was making fun of it, and then the next day somebody said, "Yeah, your thing got shut down," and I had to clip something, so I just said, "Do you want to clip it out?" I'm like, "All right, clip it out," and then it got put back up again. I don't know what got clipped. It's weird.
Yeah, it is weird. And it's the same thing with me. I never got a strike on my channel. I never got, you have to take this out of a video. I never got a video completely shut down. But just the whole channel one day, boom, just
Wow.
we found that the majority of your videos don't comply. Now, the majority of those videos that didn't comply they're all still up. And they obviously comply again.
Right.
So,
and to reinstate you without telling you what you did wrong, you just might are going to go back to doing what you did wrong before.
Yeah, let me know. If I broke the rules, all right, let me know what the rules are, what I did. I don't want to, do that again necessarily, depending what it is. But yeah, depending what it is, I might lean harder into breaking that rule. But, if it was something that's easily avoidable, I'd like to avoid it.
Sure.
But never gave me a reason. So we'll see. We'll see. I wonder, November 2024, will I get demonetized again?
You
3 times in a row.
You should do a show, the demonetization party show.
Yeah.
Get everybody on there giving you super chats and everything. Just before you get taken, it's like you have to pad the cell a little bit before.
Yeah, exactly. Man, oh man. Hey, Chuck says, I love tinfoil hat time with Pete. It's like my inner monologue come to life. Well, that's what these shows we do every now and then. That's what they're for. Exercise the demons. Anybody that's got a this is a safe space.
Safe space. Yeah.
But it's a fascinating conversation. I think that a lot of people think about. They maybe don't talk about it as much, but I'm seeing more and more people talk about this kind of stuff lately, which is good. I think that people should have these kinds of conversations that encourage them to think about the possibilities of various things, to wonder about the world, to feel like everything we know right now is not everything we'll ever know. I think to do the opposite of that is so detrimental to our growth as human beings, our growth as society, and ultimately leads to authoritarianism. And that's just something I don't think that many of us want to see come to life, even though in some cases we've seen that come to life throughout history, and maybe in some cases even right now that exists. But I think the more that we encourage conversation, a very innocent thing to do, I think the better chances we have against that kind of future coming to life.
Yeah, I agree. There's so much stuff. The more we learn about anything, the more we realize we don't know. I'm fascinated by physics and astrophysics and stuff that goes out in space and what happens in the universe and what is the universe and what are a concept of how large things are. We're all hindered by our own perception of size and largeness and stuff because of our just who we are, and we see everything from a specific view. But when you start to get outside yourself into these other places and put yourself out into the universe and stuff, and you realize how small we are, what the Earth looks like from Mars. When they're taking pictures, when the Mars rover is taking pictures of the Earth looking back there, and that that's the only place in our galaxy that has life on it, intelligent life. Um, there may be microbes or something, maybe in some of them, but it's not likely. We're in that Goldilocks zone, is what they call it. The
Yeah, at
distance
the
between
very least, as far as what we're being told, anyway, right?
Well, they found water on the moon, which is interesting.
Yeah,
And so part of the whole process of getting to Mars is establishing bases on the moon, and we need water because water is heavy. We can't transport it. It's not easy to transport, but if there is water there, we can manufacture it. We can the carbon and the oxygen, the hydrogen, and all that kind of stuff, and we can make it. And then we don't have gravity is a problem, so we can launch directly from there and achieve faster speeds, or ultimate speeds, in getting to Mars faster. That stuff just
yeah.
fascinates me.
And the moon has a lot of, from what I've read anyway, there's a lot of helium-3 inside of the minerals of the moon, the surface of the moon, that they could mine it if they went up there, and it's a tremendously powerful fuel source. So if they were able to do something like that, I mean, there's all kinds of different possibilities that they could unlock.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's
Yeah,
the
they don't
thing.
even
It's
have to do
fascinating.
solid fuel.
Yeah,
This ion power, which they're talking about, um, for using once the ship is in space, which is cool. Oh, there we go.
yeah. It's to me, it's endlessly fascinating. All that stuff is it's even what drew me to comic books, because comics have so much, especially superhero comics, had so much ingrained into them that was like people would call pseudoscience, but a lot of the time, if you look back, especially like a lot of the Stan and Jack stuff of what they were making, like Fantastic Four and all these other kinds of things that were going on, I think they were into far more stuff back then of what was going on with ancient astronaut theory, carried to the gods, and then also a lot of the other stuff that was happening, and putting little things and theories of their own into these works, and some of those things have actually come to light as science fact, and that they're possible. But back then, maybe they were just like, I don't know, it just sounds fantastic. Let me just put that in there because they didn't want to be viewed as crazy people. They're just, we're just storytellers, But
Well, that stuff was mostly Jack. He was
oh
into,
yeah.
Stan wasn't into that stuff. He could characterize that kind of thing, but those kind of high concept ideas, you gotta hand the baton to Jack for that one, because you see it throughout his work.
Oh yeah, with New Gods and everything too.
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
Eternals.
Yeah. New Gods and the Eternals. I think in the first issue of the Eternals, it's like these archaeologists, discover, this space ship that looks exactly like the Traveler from Alien, and it was like 2 or 3 years before that movie even came out.
Yeah.
Which was
Absolutely.
to me was fascinating. It's like, oh wow, somebody was looking at the Eternals when they were designing that look for Alien.
Yeah, absolutely. And you bring up a good point too with the whole the aspect of what Stan was doing with characterization. He was good with kind of grounding some of those characters, especially characters like the Silver Surfer, into being more, human-esque. But the concepts and everything that was being put out there, that Kirby was putting into the world, man, that stuff has always resonated with me. And I don't know if it's a thing that it resonates with human beings because maybe there's something, if you trace it back long enough, you find that within the DNA, you got ancestry that goes to Lord knows where, or if it's just something where we've got a longing for exploration in some way, shape, or form. But even then, I look at that and I think that has to stem from somewhere. Like our constant desire to explore and tap into the unknown, and we reach our potential and we want to reach further. That kind of stuff has to stem from somewhere. And I think that we're seeing a very horrible effort, a very strong effort to tap that out of people, to get people out of that mindset, to lose their power and their potential, and to kind of just be like, no, your life happens to you. You don't do anything for your life. You don't try to achieve things. If you struggle with it, it means you're not supposed to do any of that. If it doesn't come easy to you, you should give up. And there's a lot of that mentality that's out there. And I'm seeing, when I was a substitute teacher for about 4 years, between like 2009, 2010 to 2012, 2013. I saw a lot of that even within the education system, where kids that were struggling, a lot of the times these teachers or teacher assistants, when I was a sub helping out, they'd be squashing these kids from trying to overcome what was going on. And then if there was, at that point in time, it was like the height of the anti-bullying phase. And it wasn't about building kids up and their self-esteem. It was about making sure that they could trust authority, and that they were encouraged to tattletale, encouraged to make mountains out of molehills, and distrust their friends and classmates. If something went down, you would report it. Be a snitch nonstop. It was never about building a kid up. It was never about having empathy or sympathy or understanding for each other and yourselves. It was always about make sure you just tell on each other and trust the authority. We'll do what's right. And there was assemblies that I was sitting in on, and I was
That's
like,
scary.
What is this? This is horrible.
Yeah.
And this was around 2011 or so when that was really going down. And now, 13 years later, we're seeing a lot of those kids who would have been maybe 10 to 12 years old at the time. Now they're like 22 to 25. And I hope a lot of those lessons didn't stick. I hope somewhere along the line they got someone to be like, no, let's build you up. Build you up, build up your self-esteem, your confidence, get you, outside of your shell, and not necessarily every problem you ever have in life, you turn to someone else. Please fix this problem for me. Very dangerous road to go down, and it was heartbreaking to see that occur.
Yeah, well, it creates a society going down the road that doesn't understand rugged individualism, which is what founded this nation. The ability to change things, change your station in life. We all came over from Europe where there was caste systems, and here you could be what you wanted to be. You could create yourself, and that's still there. It's still the land of freedom, and you can become what you want to become, and you can recreate yourself if you need to. But it takes effort, it takes confidence, and it takes the knowledge to know that it can be done. And if you tell them when they're young that you can't do it, well, they're never going to try it. I've always thought that they should be teaching entrepreneurism in schools.
Absolutely.
They should be pushing these students to learning trades, and not just getting ridiculous degrees that don't pay off, that just saddle you with all kinds of debt. If you're not going to be a physicist, a lawyer, a doctor, or something where you have to have a degree, every physicist, lawyer, doctor, billionaire needs plumbers. They need welders. They need cabinet makers and construction workers, contractors, that kind of stuff, auto mechanics. We all need those skills, and there's a shortage of them, and we should be pushing that, for kids that maybe don't like, tests and going to school and stuff like that. It's not a question of their intelligence. It's just a question of their lack of interest. Many of these guys are super smart when you hand them a wrench, and they know how to fix things, and they understand 3 dimensions, and that's a different kind of intelligence. But just because you can memorize something from a book doesn't make you smarter than that guy who can fix your car.
Absolutely. There's a lot of things that I was seeing too. My time, I was in Massachusetts, for those who were wondering. I was in Massachusetts at the time as a substitute teacher, 5 different school districts. And I was seeing during that period, art departments getting defunded, art classes, music classes getting shut down, sports getting shut down in various places. And all I could think is, you get these creative type classes that help you with problem solving and adapting and finding an outlet. And then you get sports, which helps you work with others towards achieving a goal.
Right. Teamwork.
So you get all that stuff being shut down, and it turns into the regurgitation time and again of the curriculum for the standardized test, where everyone fits in a little square, and if you don't fit there, you're a problem. That is a horrible mindset for individuals to grow up in, where people could actually thrive and succeed in another way if they were shown that other way. But if you're only shown the one way, and that one way maybe doesn't work for you, all of a sudden now you're viewed as a problem. And it's so unfortunate because then those kids they feel helpless, powerless, hopeless, and they go down a sad road if they don't have enough people around them in their life, in their family, in their community supporting them.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
But yeah, I absolutely agree. It would be amazing to see an entrepreneurship type course for kids, a nutrition course. Yeah. Especially, you're taught so much about chemistry and biology and whatnot in school, and I don't know how that's going nowadays. But in terms of, it would be great to see more, going back to, okay, you want people, you care about their health, you want them to be educated on that. Well, they have to know about nutrition. They have to know about how to take care of themselves. They have to know about what is happening when you put these things into your body. How does your body break these things down and use them effectively or not effectively in some cases? But that's something I've always really enjoyed seeing from you. You really push like the fitness aspect of it, just even and not necessarily being preachy about it. But some of your videos are great on your channel where you talk about I forget how you word it, but it's like a how do you word it for your videos? I forget the title that you name them.
Which videos?
It was like the ones like you're a desk jockey or something, like desk jockey fitness or something.
Yeah, that was it. Desk jockey fitness. Yeah.
Yeah. Those are great.
For the guy who sits on his butt all day, what do you do? How do you get in shape? Yeah, I did a whole bunch of videos about that. And you just got to. The worst thing your body can do is sit. We're bipeds. We're meant to be moving. Standing is a great function. Squatting is a great function. Our ancestors didn't have chairs. It was easier to squat, and you still see primitive peoples now squatting as a way of sitting and eating and stuff like that. And that's a natural human motion, and yet nobody does it anymore. Most people, if you said, squat into a hole, can you do it? And they can't. Their hip flexors are so tight. They just can't get into it, and that's something you really should work on, keeping that chain, that lower chain strong. Your largest muscles there, your quadriceps, your hip flexors, your butt muscles, your gluteus maximus. These are big muscles, and they're big for a reason. And they need to be worked. So yeah, this is the kind of stuff I like to tell people to get their ass in gear and get moving.
It's an important thing to keep in mind, because you're right. You do in this kind of job in particular, you're sitting down a lot. You're spending a lot of time at the drawing board or on the computer or whatever it may be, and taking care of your health, often it's not even on the list, let alone secondary. So I love when you put those videos up. They're great. Every now and then I'll go back if I feel I'm falling off the wagon. I'll go back and I'm like, what's Graham talking about again? I gotta get a refresher.
The other side of that coin is the nutrition aspect. There's so much lies about that we've been told for years about what proper human nutrition is, and it's not about balancing stuff out, and eating vegetables and stuff like that. Our ancestors, we've been on the planet for about 22 million years, something like that, as hominids. And if you look at our existence on the planet as a football field, right? You start at one end zone, you go to the other. So here's the beginning. Here's where we are now. That entire distance up until like maybe the 1 foot line, we ate fats and proteins, and that's occasionally some nuts, maybe some berries when they're in season and stuff. But we weren't harvesting broccoli. We weren't eating vegetables, because most vegetables kill you. It was only until about 12,000 years when we started an agrarian culture, where we introduced grains and stuff into the human diet. And there's a lot of people that say that that was the beginning of a lot of the problems we have as human beings, is the ingestion of things that we can't eat naturally. We can't eat grains, we can't eat oats unless we process them. We have to process them. Rice, another one. You have to process it to be able to consume it. Our stomachs aren't designed that way. Cows can build muscle. Cattle can build muscle eating grass and food like that because they have chambered stomachs. Where every nutrient is extracted from that. Ours can't. Ours doesn't do that. So the best thing is to get all those nutrients from the animal that ate that stuff and processed it completely. I had a vitamin D deficiency for quite a while, and I was taking vitamin D pills because I live in the Northeast like you. Don't get enough sunshine for 6 months of the year, 8 months of the year. And I started popping vitamin D3, and it didn't do a thing. Then I went on a carnivore diet and started eating just red meat, fat, and stuff like that. And my vitamin D level went right through the roof.
Wow.
Because I was extracting it from the animal that was extracting it from with its multi-chambered stomach.
Well, that's the other part too that's fascinating to me is the fact that, and I don't know what blood type you are. I don't know if you want to say that. I don't know if you know what you are. You probably do.
I always
most
forget.
people should. But
it's a common. I'm a common one.
Yeah, because I'm an O positive. But there's all kinds of different. So there's the A, B, the O is the positive, negative, whatever it is that you've got going. In the AB as well. All those different blood types, it plays a big part into how nutrition factors into your digestion and how you can actually absorb nutrients throughout your system. And yet, meanwhile, for the most part, that's never spoken about within the context of your fitness, your nutrition, whatever you do when you go see a doctor and they do a blood test. They don't tell you about a lot of them don't even mention any of that. They look at that as, oh, that's like whack job, holistic, yada, yada,
Yeah.
take a pill, take this, do that, the other thing. And that's unfortunate because it plays a big part into how you're able to sustain that. So to me, it sounds like you managed to tap into what really works for you, especially in terms of how your body can break that stuff down. But yeah, you're 100% right in terms of the processing of food. Holy smokes.
Oh yeah, and the cholesterol scam, that they constantly push to keep people on these statins. They keep lowering the number of where your total cholesterol should be.
Oh
Your
yeah, it's
brain,
like every year. Eggs are good, eggs are bad. Eggs are good, eggs are bad.
Yeah, there's no correlation between serum cholesterol and the food you eat. Your body produces cholesterol. Your brain is 20% cholesterol. And they're finding out that people with higher cholesterol have less risk of dementia. And cholesterol in terms of heart disease is only a factor if you have a metabolic disorder, because that's the real factor in heart disease. If there's a thoracic surgeon and a cardiologist named Philip Avadia, and he's got a book, How to Stay Off My Table, which I recommend people reading. It's excellent. And what he says is that high cholesterol on its own is not a marker at all. Now, high cholesterol and high triglycerides, okay, something's going on here, that you have to make some changes. But the whole metabolic syndrome that most people have from eating all these processed foods causes inflammation in the arteries, and that inflammation causes cracks, and then the cholesterol comes through to naturally repair those cracks like stucco on a wall to smooth it out.
Yeah,
But
that's right.
if you don't deal with the inflammation, it's going to continue to inflame. More cracks are going to happen. Cholesterol is going to come in, smooth that over, and now your arteries are starting to get thinner and thinner, and then you've got a problem. So it's not about lowering your cholesterol so as is about lowering your inflammation issues, and a lot of that can be done dietarily.
Oh, yeah.
You start with elimination diet, which would be like a complete elimination diet is a carnivore diet where you're just eating fats and meats, and that's it, and water, drinking water and salt. You don't watch the salt at all. Just eat as much, to keep your electrolytes in. Then you can start working some things back in to find out, okay, what's working? Maybe throw some nuts in here, maybe some vegetables. Am I getting any kind of inflammation markers or anything like that? And find out where you sit, and
Yeah.
that's how that's how should approach it. As far as like, I go to a doctor, and if he says my cholesterol's up, I'm like, so what? My balance is good. My high cholesterol, my HDH is good. My triglycerides are low. If my LDL is high, doesn't matter. It's irrelevant, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, and this is a good thing too, hidden hand. This is something I've been learning about over the past year with omega-3, omega-6. And omega-6, you want to start lowering that big time.
Yeah. And those seed oils, throw them out. Don't eat anything that has them if you can.
And they're in everything. Holy
Yeah,
smokes.
and don't eat, don't use vegetable oil. I mean, what vegetables have oil? What is that? It's a processed oil. I mean, it sounds like, oh, it's so healthy. It's from vegetables. Really? You see a lot of oil getting squeezed out of vegetables?
Only olives.
Yeah, only olives, but olive oil, that's a fruit.
Yeah.
That's a good oil.
Yeah, that's a great oil. Love it.
Yeah.
But yeah, man,
Nothing beats saturated fat. Nothing beats, tallow, ghee, butter. Those are great fats.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I love this conversation, man. Graham, you hit like every note of things I love talking about.
Oh, cool.
Massive Panda, thank you for the super chat. Says 100% Graham. Remember when the food suggests 8 to 11 servings of bread? If I ate that many carbs, I'd be fat. I think they changed it recently. Yeah, I remember seeing that as a kid, that I'm like, you're supposed to eat this every day.
Well, the history of that food pyramid is really interesting.
Eat 4 or 5 loaves of bread a day.
Yeah.
Along with like,
The whole anti-saturated fat thing came in the 1950s. There was a guy by the name of Ansel Keys who had this theory post World War II that a lot of poorer countries had higher levels of heart disease because of all the fatty meats and stuff that they were eating. And so he did this thing called the seven countries. 7 country study, I think it was. The only problem was it was a 14 country study, but only 7 of them fit the narrative he was trying to do. So he jettisoned the other 7 because he found that like countries like France and countries like Germany that had high fat intake, high animal meat and stuff like that, had no greater risk of heart disease than anybody else. But he threw that stuff out. Then he got into the ear, because he was a very charismatic person. He got in the ear of Dwight Eisenhower's doctor. And Eisenhower had a couple heart attacks. And so he started telling him, you got to get off saturated fats, eat more vegetables, all that kind of stuff. And then you get the American Heart Association that starts buying into it. And they get a multi-million-dollar grant from Procter & Gamble, who are the makers of margarines and vegetable oils and Crisco and stuff like that, who got on the bandwagon and said, okay, yeah, saturated fat's bad. Well, what happened when all those people got together and said that and changed the food pyramid was that the obesity rate and the diabetes in this country has skyrocketed. You look at what it was in the 1940s when people were eating meat and butter and that kind of stuff and unprocessed foods. And now those numbers are absolutely through the roof. Just in the last 20 years alone, you can go back and look at those numbers state by state. And it's absolutely ridiculous.
Well, and I mean,
we've been told by people that this is the way you're supposed to eat, and it is not good for you.
Absolutely. And going back a bit to the conspiracy theory thing, the guy that was behind the creation of Pringles was the head of DARPA.
What's DARPA?
DARPA is they do a lot of interesting things in the military. And it was under the Eisenhower administration at the time that they formed DARPA. And it was basically, it's a whole, I forget exactly, it's like Department of something or other. But it's a whole department that's behind all these different things that are created and tested and come up with in terms of like they create bugs with they put cameras on them.
Oh, geez. Okay.
They've created defense aeronautics. Yeah, exactly. They create a lot of high tech espionage military applications, and it's interesting to me when I found out that the guy that was responsible for spearheading Pringles, the
Wow.
potato chip that's not a potato chip,
Yeah, it's
um,
potato product.
was head of DARPA, which is like, I mean, you could go down the rabbit hole with so many things. Like we said, everything seems to be connected in one way or the other.
Hmm.
But that's interesting in terms of the history of food, nutrition, food quality, ingredients, all that stuff. Man, I didn't think I was going to be having such an in-depth conversation with you today, Graham, and I am so happy that I did.
Awesome. Yeah, it's fun. Fun. I like talking about this kind of stuff. It's in my
Absolutely,
wheelhouse.
man. We'll have to do a whole. I would love to just do a whole dedicated like fitness nutrition episode with you at one point in time. That would be a
Sure.
blast because I think it's really important too, specifically talking about correlating to the stuff that you discussed with your desk jockey fitness. Because there are so many comic creators over the years that I've known that they've struggled with health issues, they struggle with exercise, finding the time, not knowing what exercises to do, not knowing how to eat properly, even what to snack on, and they make a lot of consistent bad choices over and over again, and it leads up and it compiles and it compounds into severe health issues. I
Yeah.
think it'd be a really important thing to address. I'm gonna have to talk to you about that. A
Yeah, we'll
whole
do it. That'll be fun.
concentrated show. That'd be great.
Yeah, we can
But
do
for
it.
now, our time is over. And Graham, thank you so much, man. This was a wonderful conversation, one of the best I've ever had on this show. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, man. It's
Well, I
always a
appreciate
blast.
you having me on, Pete. Yeah, it's always fun. Always fun.
Absolutely. So before we go, where can they find you, and where would you like to send them after the show? Because I see that your campaign is also very close to a milestone here.
Yeah, we're. I don't know where it's at right now, but when we hit 90,000, all right. So we're at $125 away. When we hit 90,000, that's a new stretch level goal. Everybody is going to get a digital wallpaper for their phone. But then at 100,000, and we've got 9 days left. If we hit 100,000 before that, the 9 days are up, I'm adding an 8-page story into the book called Kirby's Cigar. It's a satirical indictment of the comic book industry, and it's funny, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm hoping we can close out strong. We can get that to 100K, and we can add that into the book. The easiest place to find me and everything Compass Comics is compasscomics.com. If you go there, you can find all the books I've published before, and you can also get there's the link to the Return to Monster Island campaign, which is going on right now. So that would be the easiest place to send you. Just go to compasscomics.com, and from there you can go to Indiegogo, or you can check out the books that I've already previously published, which are all somewhat connected, by the way.
That's great.
Yeah, they're self-contained stories. You don't have to have one to read the other, but there's elements in them that will show you that these are all connected. And then when we get to the last one that we're fulfilling now, Ghost of Metakumba Key, it shows you how all this stuff is interconnected. So
Fantastic,
fun stuff,
man.
Yeah, it's fun stuff.
Yeah, so if you guys haven't had a chance yet, like Graham said, $125 away from 90,000. What a benchmark. And you're sitting on the doorstep to 100. I think you're going to get there, man. I really do. And Cole, thank you so much for gifting 10 memberships to the people here. If you guys have a membership, fantastic. If you'd like to get one on your own, 99 cents a month. Cancel anytime you want. Keep it as long as you want. You get access to over 100 videos that have been archived, and you also get access, of course, to the emojis in the chat. And thank you guys for your support. And Cole, thank you so much. So yeah, go check out Return to Monster Island. That's Graham's latest. And Graham, I'm gonna have to schedule with you. I'll get caught up with you soon.
All
Schedule
right.
something for maybe May or so. That sounds like a good time period to get people thinking about getting up and active.
That sounds good to me.
So we'll have to do that, a fitness nutrition show centered
Yeah.
towards comic creators and comic readers. There we
Cool.
go. But all right, man. Thank you so much, Graham, for your
All right,
time
Pete.
today, for the conversation. Everybody, thank you guys. You're always great. Appreciate it. And I'll see you guys soon. And until then, have a great rest of your day, a great night, and an even better tomorrow. I'll see you guys soon.